Good morning, everybody. We are going to start in a few minutes, if you like to take a seat. So, good morning to everybody, our attendant here on site and also our attendants online. My name is Nicola Tollin. I'm Professor of Urban Resilience at the University of Southern Denmark and I have the pleasure to facilitate this side event today. The side event is titled Urban Resilience and the Nationally Determined Contribution. We will give a perspective from expert practitioners, policymakers, and discuss how urban resilience can be improved in order to tackle climate change challenges. The event is organized by Arup, UN Habitat, the University of Southern Denmark, Resilient City Network, and City Alliance. It is a structure with this welcome remark, and after there will be an introduction to the session given by Pasquale Capizzi, that's climate change lead in Arup. Following this introduction, we will have a panel with our invited speakers joining on-site and online and giving their perspective on urban resilience in relation to climate change. And also we will try to make the session as much interactive as possible. So we will have a good use of Mentimeter in order to have a more direct interaction with you. But without any further delay, I would like to introduce our first panelist for some initial remarks. So I would like to welcome here Pasquale Capizzi, that's climate change lead at Arup. Pasquale, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nicola. Morning, everyone. Evening, wherever you are. I've been asked to frame the scope of this event, which I will begin by saying that urban resilience as an applied concept to city management is not 20 years old. I think we've been developing tools, methods, and practice for urban resilience in the last 10 to 15 years to enable decision makers, city practitioners, and many people in the cities to basically live with and apprehend complexity and plan, design, invest, and act on it. We've been developing fairly influential tools and methods over time. Obviously, there is the City Resilience Index, which was developed by Arup, enabled by Rockefeller Foundation, and then that 100 Resilient Cities movement deployed to develop city resilience is more than in many cities in the world. There's obviously the City RAP, the City Resilience Action Plan that UN Habitat developed that stemmed from needs in the Southern African countries and then developed to other regions in the world. And I do think that some of these tools and methods became quite practical and useful to understand complexity and act on it. It is also fair to say that many of these tools did not make a rigorous use of climate change. Climate change has been one of the topics, one of the issues that's been discussed in all these strategies and tools, but not necessarily the driver for that. Now, having been myself preparing at least one NDC at the time and developing national climate change policies and strategies, I saw at the time how hard it was to integrate urban issues into the national climate change programming levels, let alone the sophistication and the complexity of interdependencies and urban resilience and all the rest of it. So that was complex. I think that 5 years on, 6 years on, things have changed slightly. Nicola today is going to show us exactly how, but I do think that there is still work to do. So we thought, as practitioners, as Arup, UN Habitat, and many others that Nicola already mentioned, that was a good moment to get together and start to reflect on how urban resilience can actually unlock the potential of urban potential of NDCs. On the one hand, one needs to evolve. So to complete this very initial brief around what we're doing today, I'd like us to reflect on these two main questions. An overarching one, which is about how all this wealth of tools, practices, knowledge, know-how that we develop around urban resilience can help unlocking the urban potential of NDCs. So that would be our overarching question. And the second question, which is nested within that, is what is it that needs to change from the urban resilience practice and maybe the climate change community of practice to be able, for us to be able to do that. So these are the two questions I think that bring us today together. I leave these questions in the expert facilitator hands of Nicola here today, and I hope that after that we will have a bit of a marching orders and a few points for a working agenda for the next years to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much to our host Pasquale Capizzi for framing our session. That it's quite a challenging question, Pasquale. I would like just before we starting the panel discussion to make a short presentation giving some highlights regarding some research work that we've been conducting in collaboration with a number of UN agencies. Next, please. Next, please. So I would like to start from a national level perspective. This is a white paper that has just been launched. It's been realized by UN Habitat, University of Southern Denmark, and it's a follow-up of the first analysis of the urban content of the NDCs that was realized by the same organization with partner organizations in 2016. And today we've been making a preliminary analysis trying to understand how much urban there is in the NDCs. And also we've been trialing some more in-depth country analysis, piloting 3 countries, namely the Republic of Colombia, the Republic of the Philippines, the Republic of Rwanda, trying to understand more in detail which type of urban inclusion there is in their climate policies. NDCs, but also other national climate policies. Next, please. Here's some very preliminary result or the more global analysis. You can see here in 2 shades of blue, country NDCs that are having urban content, dark blue, a strong urban content, meaning a content that's portrayed in dedicated headers, sections of part of the NDCs itself. Light blue, it's a moderate urban content with mention of urban issues, both challenges and responses within the body of the text of the NDC. One good surprise is that compared to the 69% NDCs with urban content 2016, now there is 84% of the NDCs containing urban issues. Next, please. And also, we have been doing this in-depth country analysis, piloted in 3 countries. And here you can see urban mitigation challenges and urban adaptation challenges and mitigation and adaptation responses. This is an example for the Republic of the Philippines. This allowing me to raise 2 main points. The fact that an NDC doesn't contain urban content, it doesn't mean that the country is not active in undertaking any urban climate action, any urban resilient action. It simply means that it's not portrayed in the very one and most important national policy document. That's a different message, but still a very important one. Nevertheless, countries like the Philippines are having strong urban content in other national climate policies. Next, please. Another point that came out from this more in-depth country analysis, it's actually the very evident integration of multiple sectors at once, both in terms of mitigation and adaptation. But still some discrepancies in alignment in between different types of policies, climatic policies for what matters for cities, and also in some cases a disalignment in between the definition, clear definition of challenges versus the clear definitions and correspondence with measures to respond to these challenges. Next, please. Here are some preliminary results of this first stock take for this second batch of the NDCs. Again, more urban attention. Particularly, it was clear an increase in the number of NDCs with a strong urban content. This is promising, although even the strong urban content doesn't mean that everything is written in the NDC. It's measurable, it's having clear targets, appropriate financial resources, appropriate technological support, and appropriate institutional frameworks. So just a note of caution. There is also an increase in the number of NDCs that are combining urban matters both in mitigation and adaptation. So it's a move toward a more integrated approach and looking for co-benefits that in part urban resilience, just as a spoiler, may help to bridge. Then we have also a higher, still some gaps in between identify urban challenges and identify urban responses. And I just at the moment stop here for this little overview regarding national level. Next, please. Now, I would like to give an example to the other side of the spectrum, what is happening at very local level, and I will do that introducing a work that's currently in progress that's called Health and Climate Change City Profiles. Next, please. The work is coordinated and realized by WHO in collaboration with the CDP and the University of Southern Denmark. We are basically trying to trial the city profile looking at the correlation between health and climate change. At the moment, we are working in 6 cities at different stages of completion. And we are trying to have a very basic and clear understanding for policymakers about what is the interrelation between health and climate regarding the climate hazard and climate risk, the current commitments and intervention planned by the cities, the potential health co-benefit and health gains, and opportunity for action. Next, please. Here we have just a snapshot of some of the key results, for example, coming from one of the city profile we realized. This is for the city of Glasgow. As you can see, we have this partition: risk, planning, benefits, and action that is originally coming from basically the approach used by urban resilience. And this example with country profile and interrelation with human health, it's fundamental in trying to bridge the resilience approach with the climate adaptation approach at urban level. Because it's getting to the very basic on asking which are the impact on health of climate change and which are the co-benefit of any action responding to that. Next, please. So here just again some preliminary results to inform our discussion, panel discussion later. So we there is an opportunity to strengthen the collaboration between different departments at municipal level, the health department with the climate department or environmental department and all the others. There is definitely a clear synergy that is not yet fully taken profit of or enhanced regarding climate and health interrelation. And we have to remember that the health argument is really a fundamental argument that should also drive climate action at urban level. We have some issues and gaps that we've been realizing that are present. For example, the metrics at local level to assess the impacts of climate change are not fully developed or data that are not readily available. It's very difficult, lacking a baseline, to be able also to understand which are the positive co-benefit on health on any climate action. And these are two fundamental aspects that will require further work. Next, please. Then for the last and final part of this presentation, again trying to set up a little bit some arguments for discussion, I would like to introduce a work realized by University of Southern Denmark for UNDRR, and it's about tools and networks for local climate action. Next, please. Yes. So we've been, for this study that is currently under peer review, we have been looking at analyzing key needs and knowledge gap that local governments are having in combining urban resilience with climate change in order to unleash climate change action. And then we, on the basis of this knowledge gap mapping, we've been realizing also a stock take of currently available tools, and that you will have, here you have a fish representing one of the tools that we've been analyzing on the right in blue, and also initiative and networks that's having a red color fish. Next, please. Next. Yes, thank you. So what we did through this mapping exercise, initial mapping exercise about knowledge gap, is that we've been structuring the interdependencies among these different key fields. One is governance, looking both at vertical and horizontal integration of urban action, how national policies can support local action, and how local action shall contribute to achieving the objective of national policies. We have finance spanning from access to finance, preparation of bankable project, monitoring, reporting, evaluation, and financial management of resources. We have technology about transfer, management, and development of technology. We have spatial and urban planning regarding also how to physically. Can you go back, please? Sorry. So we're speaking about the spatial planning in order to relate the action to a specific physical context, but it's also socio-economic context. Then we have a major issue and field regarding data availability, particularly data available at local level, both in terms of potential impacts for forecasting. And then finally, a cross-cutting issue that's relevant for all the other issues that we set up, that is capacity building. So without any further ado, I would like just to raise these few issues. One, at national level, how we do include the resilience and climate change adaptation to unleash climate action into the right place for national policy when it matters most. How we support the local action, and also how intermediate type of initiatives, network and agencies, also represented later in our panel, can support this transition, this integration of work and all that. So thank you very much for this. And now I would like to start with our panel discussion. So I would like to invite our panelists to join me here on the stage. Would like first of all to introduce Clara Muzio, that's Minister for Public Space and Urban Hygiene for the City of Buenos Aires. Clara, welcome, please. Then I would like to call here Lauren Sorkin, that's Executive Director of Resilient City Network. Welcome, Lauren. We have online Rene, Peder, Hormann, that's head of the global programs for City Alliance. Welcome, Rene. We have Dr. Eike Litzinger, head of unit for cities division at BMZ, Germany. Welcome, Dr. Eike. Then we will have Pasquale Capizzi, that's climate change lead at Arup. And online, also Frugina Strauss, that's Program Management Officer at UN Habitat. So welcome to everybody. You will have in around 5 minutes each in a snapshot to give your views on the question that Pasquale highlighted at the beginning of our session, namely we will look at what urban resilience question is well posed to help climate change and the NDCs, and the second one, what to change in urban resilience practice in order to unlock the full potential of climate change action. So I would like first to give the word to Lauren to start with their take. If you like to come here or as you prefer, where you are more comfortable.
Okay, now? There we go. Well, thank you so much for the introduction. It's wonderful to be here in the Resilience Hub with all of you. Very happy to be speaking about the nationally determined contributions and urban resilience as a lens for that. For those of you who I haven't met, again, I'm Lauren Sorkin. I'm the Executive Director of Resilient Cities Network, and we really work with cities to help them to be strong in a world where things are going wrong. So what I'm going to really focus on is governance, because at the end of the day, resilience is a capacity. It's the capacity to respond, to adapt, and to thrive in the face of shocks and stresses. And so as we talk about what it means to use urban resilience with the nationally determined contributions, it's actually a framework for building that capacity and for actually figuring out how we use this amazing opportunity to leverage financing, to leverage funding, and build back better, and create that just transition. So I think if you go to the next slide. So what we're really looking at here is the importance of building capacity. What we have in terms of nationally determined contributions are commitments. But in order to actually leverage those commitments, you have to prepare projects in such a way that they deliver multiple benefits. So the reason I wanted to show this slide is because what we focus on as a network, and you can go to the next slide, is actually empowering cities. So empowering the people within the cities to use resilience as a framework, a practical tool to prepare investments that are going to deliver on emissions reductions, on nationally determined contributions, but also to deliver those social and economic benefits. Right? Because cities have limited dollars. You need to use them to achieve multiple benefits. So what we do is we empower cities with the skills, frameworks, and tools to do that, and then we mobilize across cities so you can prepare projects in a common way. And the picture that you saw earlier were just an example from different training programs that we're running throughout the world that actually take cities' plans and then use urban resilience as a lens for project preparation. And that actually helps them not just to mobilize the benefits, but actually attracts more funding. Right? Because more actors are excited to give funding to projects that deliver multiple benefits. So next slide, please. So I think if you were to take away a couple of key messages here, I know we're supposed to be brief in our introduction. the way urban resilience as a tool is poised to help with nationally determined contributions is really threefold. By actually creating capacity, and Resilient Cities Network, we do that through a specific position of a Chief Resilience Officer, putting someone in place that can help channel these investments, help to determine how they're deployed. Use city budgets effectively to deliver both the nationally determined contributions and, as I mentioned, those social and economic contributions. And finally, using urban resilience as a capacity building tool, as a framework, not just as a one-off, right, but as a way to keep organizing city investments and deploy them essentially through the budget. Next slide. Okay. And finally, just in terms of very specific tools, as I said, cities need tools and frameworks to do this. We use something called the Resilience Framework. It was developed with Rockefeller Foundation and Arup many years ago as a planning framework for city strategies. We have since taken that framework and actually brought it down to the next level, which is called the R lens. It's a project resilience lens. And we also have developed a quick scorecard called the RIDE scorecard, easy to remember, Resilience, Infrastructure, Diversity, and Equity scorecard, so that you can even layer again on top of your projects, going very quickly, a tool that you can use to ensure that your city's projects are going to deliver for the most vulnerable communities and they're going to create jobs. So we really see that there is this opportunity to use this investment, massive investments in transport, in energy, and other kinds of infrastructure goods that we need to leverage using an urban resilience lens to plan and then to deliver projects that will give multiple benefits.
Thank you very much, Lauren. Before getting on with you a second, I would like to call our participants to the session here, our audience here and online, to please check this Mentimeter, because we would like to try to be a little bit more interactive with you, and would like also to hear. Next, please. So the first question for all of you, it's which is the key factor for strengthening urban resilience for climate action through multi-level governance? So, Lauren, just a quick question from my side. You are very clearly expressed that urban resilience, it's a concept, it's a meta concept that can integrate things, can integrate effort and create these multiple benefits. From a governance, from finance perspective, that make all the sense. Is there any blockage or any opportunity in order also to integrate governance for that? How do you see the alignment in between a national policies and local action in this direction?
I think some part of the answer was in the question, right? This is a panel on the nationally determined contributions. So national governments need to create the, it's not on. It says on. Hello? Okay, let me hold it closer. So essentially, national governments have to create the enabling environment for cities to act. But at the end of the day, we know that it's actually cities who are going to act and deliver these projects on the ground. But without the enabling environment from national governments, it's impossible for a couple of reasons, right? Most cities do not manage their own infrastructure budget, especially when we're talking about energy and transport. These are mostly regional services, and the funding, most of it comes from national governments or national private sector sources. We don't talk about this enough, but we're here in an international negotiation, so a lot of the dialogue will tilt towards looking at international financing or multilateral financing. But when we're talking about urban resilience, 90% of the dollars or euros or pesos, they're actually coming they're actually coming from national sources, national governments and private sectors. So if the national government sets the regulation and the incentives correctly, then you can build in the resilience investment. But the national government needs to create a value for that in the NDC conversation.
Thank you very much, and very well said that we need also something in between the national level and the local one. So here some our first results, and the winner is the support of national governments to local action. As you said, Lauren, that's the starting point for all this. So again, thank you very much, Lauren. Now I would like to pass the word and welcome again Dr. Eike Litzinger, that's joining us online. Dr. Eike, we are soon solving this technical problem. Yes, now we can see you. Welcome again, Eike.
Thank you, Nicola.
And the floor is yours whenever you are ready.
Nicola, thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me here at this panel. I'm working at the Ministry for Development Cooperation in Berlin, and I'm really impressed already by these first three inputs we had from Nicola, from Lauren, but from the Mentimeter as well. I think what I am going to delineate now in a couple of minutes is just very much in line of what you have said so far. We really think in our ministry that cities are not only a source of high emissions, they are also drivers of sustainable development, because they have such a high concentration of knowledge hubs, government institutions, private actors, and engaged citizens. They provide a high potential to foster innovative and integrated solutions for sustainable development. So we really are convinced that cities need to be better integrated into national strategies. They provide valuable contributions to climate mitigation and adaptation, as well as to social justice. So that's why we have developed a new strategy paper, which we are calling Responsibility for Our Planet, Climate and Energy. And there we define sustainable urban development as one major area of intervention. To achieve the goal of livable and climate neutral cities, I think we need three things. And that's what we have tried to explain in this strategy. We need substantially more financing, obviously, but we need an integrated approach at the local level as well. And thirdly, a coherent approach across all levels of government. So firstly, we think we face an immense financing gap. Each year, more than $1 trillion is missing in terms of investing into sustainable urban infrastructure. Cities worldwide lack financial resources as well as access to finance. This is particularly evident with regards to financing for adaptation and recovery measures. Both continue to be severely underfunded. We need a stronger focus on adaptation and resilience in view of increasing climate risks. Otherwise, we risk to abandon a large number of our habitats. Closing this financing gap requires an interplay of diverse instruments. We need to increase cities' own revenues, ensure more reliable national transfers, and support access to capital markets. We also need new forms of partnerships for resource mobilization. Cooperation with private actors is becoming more important through public-private partnerships and direct private financing. However, such private activities need to be aligned with local strategies. And secondly, this goes very much in line with what you, Nicola, have explained with the findings in your white paper. Resilience must not only be considered from a climate perspective. We think we need a holistic approach here. The COVID pandemic has clearly shown that resilience must also be considered from a social, economic, and public health perspective. The latter has been stressed in the white paper we have heard about. In order to support fast recovery in 5 cities in Rwanda, Bangladesh, and Mauritania, our ministry has commissioned the Resilient Cities Action Package, short RECAP 21. It supports green recovery measures and multi-level governance. The initiative is jointly implemented by ICLEI, Cities Alliance, Resilient Cities Network, and GIZ, in cooperation with the respective city authorities and the citizens. And Lauren Sorkin, thank you very much, has shown in her presentation a picture of a meeting which was taken in the framework of a recap activity. So that was very helpful. Thirdly, we need much better vertical integration and multi-level governance. And that was once again something you stressed with the Mentimeter results now in the slide we have just seen. For achieving the climate and sustainability development goals, we advocate for a stronger integration of cities into national strategies and NDCs. To fulfill their task to localize global agendas, cities need sound finances, enhanced technical and institutional capacities, as well as participatory and creative partnerships. We think we have to give them the tools to achieve this. German Development Corporation is fully committed to do this. Together with our partners, we have already reached important milestones in recent years by establishing the Cities Climate Gap Fund, supporting project preparation through the C40 Cities Finance Facility, and capacity building measures through our Cities Works Toolkit. And we want to continue our efforts. Our new strategy reflects this, as do our multiple cooperation networks, such as UN Habitat, the Cities Alliance, ICLAI, and C40, and the NDC partnership. So only with joint effort can we meet the major challenges of the coming years and decades. And I'm looking forward now to the discussions to have as many practical examples and approaches which we can use then for our further cooperation as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Heike. That's a brilliant and very clear overview you've been giving. Before getting back to you, I would like to ask our on-site online participants to get through the second question with our Mentimeter. And for you, Heike, I will take the liberty to ask you a little bit not too easy question. You are head of a city division in the national government. How your professional life improved, if it improved, since the Paris Agreement was signed? And I will not ask about your difficulties to get through the urban argument at national level, but if you can give me the positive story of what a recent success that you got in portraying this agenda, that will be very much appreciated. Thank you, Heike.
I think that we have now this core strategy, which I just mentioned, really stressing the importance of local actors, of cities to reach the Paris goals, is one, let's say, huge progress we've made here, that we really do look at who is implementing finally then the action which will hopefully lead us to achieve those Paris goals. Thank you. I hope this is what you were looking at.
I always...
But that's what comes to my mind. Thank you.
Yes, no, that's very clear. It's clearly an extremely important success, and I do respect good diplomatic skills in answers. Thank you very much, Heike. Please stay with us because the discussion will continue later. Now I would like to introduce our third panelist, Pasquale Capezzi from Arup. Pasquale, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Nicola. Thank you, everyone. So I've been tasked with describing what are the strengths of the urban resilience toolbox that can enable the urban potential of NDCs and what needs to change. And I've decided to do that with very quickly describing some of the work we did in Zimbabwe a couple of years back, which was a very complex undertaking. UNDP and UNICEF wanted from Arup to understand what the key issues in 32 cities of the country were when it came to the challenges of the urban basic service delivery, infrastructure, governance, multi-layer poverty, so that they could actually come up with a programming around urban resilience and a $60 million investment fund that they wanted to create around urban resilience. And obviously, the challenge was quite complex. So perhaps in Zimbabwe, at least at the time, but everywhere really, the interdependencies of the different systems was very evident. This is a picture of people queuing up for cash. Immediately when cash ran out in the country, the digital ability of the digital money came up and made up for it, until, of course, energy went out, and then the phones could not be charged, and the water plants could not actually treat water that then would go back in the river basins, then flown back into the tap waters, increasing cholera outbreaks, etc., etc., etc. So it was very clear that very interdependent systems at urban level needed to be understood if we had to answer the question, what is it that needs to be done as a priority to A, reduce vulnerability of people that are actually suffering, and B, making a more resilient system so that you can actually, in the long term, reduce this type of vulnerability. And so we deployed a series of tools within our very diverse toolbox. We first adapted the City Resilience Index that you mentioned already, Lawrence, and to look into the governance side of things, the infrastructure, of course, the ecosystem and environment, the economies, the culture, the social capital aspects of it, the basic services, and see what the key challenges were, both quantitatively and qualitatively, so that we could lay a basis of evidence for that. We then had to look at it to answer the original question, where do we start if everything is interconnected? We started to deploy a few basic tools to identify interdependencies between the water sector, the health sector, the infrastructure sector, the policies. So to answer the question, if I am an NGO and my mandate is to reduce vulnerability, where do I start? Do I start with water programming? But can I do that without also investing in policies and infrastructure, etc.? So we took the problem around and we look at what is your problem. And this is the basis of evidence for you to ask that question to the basis of evidence that we created for you, so that you can actually come out with a more sophisticated, at the same time, practical programs. We then projected climate change on top of it, and we tried to see what are going to be your challenges, your scenarios in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years to come. So we think it was a typical example in which the Urban Resilience Toolbox has been deployed to understand complexity and then helping programming. So if you can please go to the next slide. I think these, in terms of the data, the tools, the approaches, and maybe the technologies too, that urban resilience can bring to the climate change arena. There's definitely the first point to me is the ability of all this practice and knowledge and know-how to embrace complexity, to understand complexity. And I come from both the urban planning background and the climate change background, and you realize how this is important for climate change programming. So embracing uncertainty, embracing complexity, and basically plan, design, invest on it. So that's definitely something the urban resilience know-how can bring. The second point to me is breaking silos across departments, horizontally, which I think is also something we're going to see later on planning with your habitat, which is critical. You no longer have the water sector able to say this policy is only for me, this investment is only for me, but they will have to talk to energy, they will have to talk to transport, they will have to talk to other departments if they really want to come up with a resilience program for the city. Then again, it's obvious here that this is incredibly valuable for climate change planning at local level. And finally, I think the practical and innovative use of data. I've been, in the last 20 years that I've been working on these topics, I've always come across the typical discourse that cities do lack data, especially in some countries. I beg to differ. I think there's a lot of data out there. I think what these tools do, both quantitatively and qualitatively, is they make an innovative use of their data. And that is something, again, that can be useful for climate change action. Next one. However, and this is to conclude my interventions, I think there are a couple of things that need to evolve and change for the urban resilience practice to be even more useful to the climate change action planning and to be fitter for purpose in the NDC context. The first one, I think that, as I said, climate change has been one of the topics the urban resilience practitioners have talked about, have included in the tools, but not necessarily the driver. I think we need a paradigm shifting here, where climate change becomes the problem, and urban resilience toolbox are asked, how can my city become more resilient to climate change, as opposite to one more additional topic or layer of complexity we add upon resilience. So that to me is action number one. Action number two, I think, and our colleague from Buenos Aires will mention that. I think cities can no longer afford to go for an urban resilience planning investment and then for a climate change action planning investment. There's simply not enough resources, capacities out there. It's not optimal, it's not efficient. So I think these two processes will have to come together to be way more efficient and effective. And finally, I think that we all been quite analogic in all this process. Of course, we used science, of course, we used data and spatial data whenever possible, but I think we can do much more, and that will be very important when you think of the immense quantity of data that climate change entails, that we become a bit more digital in all this, and that we enable a bit more rigorous, robust decision-making processes, really unlocking the digital potential. These, to me, are the three things that should be in our marching orders to improve a little bit better.
Thank you very much, Pasquale. So our third moment for our audience on site and online for our Mentimeter. Next, please. Sorry. And in this case, we would like to ask you to rate the following statements. And meanwhile, the voting is going on, Pasquale. I would like, you've been saying that data is actually there in many cases, but it's not fully used. But there's still quite some issues regarding the localization of data, particular scenarios. Have you ever encountered this problem, or do you have some tips and tricks in order to overcome this?
Well, I'm not sure I have tips, because we, as you say, it's a constant struggle to mine that data that is very often available in cities or governments, just not made available, which is different. But if I have to count the times that I knew a particular flooding model was available in some drawers rather than not, I think that more often than not, you did have that data. It simply wasn't available, as you do point out. So I don't want to seem overly optimistic in terms of availability of data, but I think it's definitely there. I think what's different maybe is the use of data. Sometimes we have the tendency to wanting more data that we can actually process and we can actually take decisions upon, just because of the sake of data. I think an intelligent use of data is probably the solutions for many of our problems.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And our vote it's on a tie, so that the city resilience tools considered great for urban climate action. Tools needs to be adapted in order to unlock the climate action, the full NDC potential. And we actually need also further tools. So that's not, we need to go the three ways together. Lauren, please.
I was going to say, I think there's a little bit of a trick question baked in there, because we talked about this earlier, and I think that the recap program is also an example of this. I'm not so sure it's the tools that are missing. It's actually the capacity to use the tools and to actually take the time to unpack the tools that are there and use them to their highest best use, is what I would say. And so I think when we actually invest in spending the time integrating the frameworks, the preparation time, the preparation funding. I think that's what it is, combining that. Then you can have the innovation inside the process. You don't have to constantly reinvent new tools that have that one or two additional aspects.
You are too considerate to say it yourself, so you will allow me to do that. But the fundamental issue with the tool is, first of all, to know where, if they exist, where they are, how to select them. But most importantly, the work that your organization is really doing. That's the support, the capacitation, and the follow-up for the use of the tool. Because cities cannot, in many cases, just left alone with a widget. So I would like now to invite virtually on stage our next speaker, that's Rene Strauss from UN Habitat. And now we are trying to see if it's possible to see you on screen soon, Rene.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, and now we can see you. Sorry, I will not look directly at you because I'm having you on the screen from the other side. So welcome very much, Rene, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Nicola. It's great to be here. So just to quickly introduce myself, I work for the Africa Regional Office of UN Habitat, where I'm the lead for the Urban Resilience, Climate Adaptation, and Disaster Risk Reduction portfolio of the organization. It's been very encouraging to listen to the previous speakers, as I think it's clear that the resilience lens is needed and that it can help amplify the voices and actions of cities in the national and the global climate discussion. But of course, there's also always more work to be done. Taking the cue from Heike and from Pascale, talking a little bit about the practical tools that are being offered, I'd like to zoom in a little bit on Africa and resilience planning in Africa, and to bring the example of a tool that has been developed over the past 10 years and used by UN Habitat across the continent. This is the CityRap tool, and this tool has now been implemented in over 30 cities in Africa, and in fact, it's now also being taken outside of Africa, as there has been increasing interest outside the region as well. So just to start off a little bit before I dive into how I can illustrate some of the advantages of resilience planning for national level planning and the NDCs, I wanted to talk about this picture. What you're looking at here is a participatory mapping process. What the CityRap tool does is that it brings together the municipal leadership, key urban stakeholders, and the communities in small to intermediate sized cities to allow them to plan together and to gather data together and look at the critical issues of resilience together. So it is actually consistent of a number of exercises or activities which facilitate that. And I wanted to tell just a very quick story of when we implemented the CityRap tool in Lusaka, Zambia. And two of the tool's activities are a municipal self-assessment, which looks at each department of the municipality and asks each department of the municipality to rate its own planning capacities and abilities in terms of the different dimensions of resilience. And then the community participatory mapping, where actually the municipal technicians and municipal officials look together on a physical map of the most vulnerable neighborhoods to identify key hotspots, major issues. And when we conducted this exercise in Lusaka, we had a really interesting outcome, which is going to relate to sort of my first point on the next slide, which is that when the municipality presented to the community members their own assessment of their capacities, they presented relatively high capacities and they assessed their performance quite well. But we were in a room full of representatives from a vulnerable neighborhood, the neighborhood of Kenyama in Lusaka. The community leaders got outraged at first, and they said, no, I mean, this is not correct. We are not seeing these capacities as expressed in our neighborhood in Kanyama. So many vulnerabilities are not being addressed. And our team thought, wow, we're creating quite a conflict here. But slowly through dialogue, we were able to finesse the situation, and the community and the municipality were able to come to an understanding that, in fact, yes, while the municipality was overall, when you're looking at the entire city, performing quite well, when it came to this most vulnerable settlement, which was an unplanned, underdeveloped area, in fact, it wasn't able to provide the same level of services as it was in other areas. And so really it was an eye-opener for the municipality to understand this. So from there, what does this mean for national level planning and NDCs? What this means is that resilience planning tools like CityRap and other tools are crucial to be able to identify these gaps and properly implement the NDCs at a local level. We're talking here about aligning expectations. And these gaps are usually present in the most vulnerable areas, and it is the most important to bring attention to these. My second point is that these resilience tools can be used to unlock the full potential of NDCs to ensure integration and coherence of sustainable urban development and climate action. One thing that we did in preparation for this panel, just to get a quick snapshot of how these priorities are aligning, is we compared the outcomes of CityRap in a number of cities in Madagascar, Malawi, and Mozambique, and also looked at their NDCs. And what we're seeing is that they're reflecting similar adaptation measures at the local level. We're seeing a lot of reducing climate risks through strengthening multi-hazard early warning systems, enhancing solid waste management, ensuring biodiversity protection, awareness raising, and restoration of natural habitats. So we can see that tools such as CityRap can be leveraged to identify and to direct resources towards such critical areas necessary for meeting the NDCs. So these tools really help integrate adaptation as well and adaptation action into the broader climate change agenda, and to look at synergies between mitigation and adaptation. Then these tools are also very helpful in site-specific implementation and localizing the climate agenda and community engagement. They create an enabling environment to perform climate action. For example, because the communities are automatically involved from day one, they enable maintenance. I mean, if let's say, in many cities, one thing we have seen is that drainage is very important for ensuring that the communities are well prepared for disasters. But oftentimes the drainage is full of litter and rubbish, and the drainage is constructed, but it's not maintained because the community is not necessarily aware of or has the buy-in. And so these kinds of tools create that community awareness, create that community buy-in to ensure that the interventions in the end are sustainable. Then just going to the last slide, just as a quick review. So what does this mean? It means that these tools are helping us to bring the climate agenda into the broader resilience context. So it's contextualizing the climate agenda through resilience practice, taking a more holistic perspective at the city level. These tools are ensuring, I mean, this is something that has been discussed by essentially each of the speakers before me, ensuring horizontal coordination and joint planning to build political will across sectors and to facilitate communication over, something very practical. In the case of CityRap, over looking at maps together, over evaluating the municipalities' capacities together. So you're involving city officials, concerned subnational and national government entities, and local officials, facilitating this communication and coordination. And then finally, these tools are also bringing the voices of the communities up to local authorities to vertical integration. So we're looking at how these tools facilitate both horizontal and vertical integration, which also then helps to identify the benefits of converging adaptation and mitigation, adaptation at the local level, mitigation also at the national level, which of course also relates back to the NDCs. So these are sort of the benefits, and then I just quickly wanted to, and I guess maybe I assume, Nicola, that your question might be a little bit on this, just to give a few thoughts on the limitations that we're facing here. One is that a lot of these tools are difficult to implement in larger cities. At least in our experience, it has worked better in small to intermediate cities. The tools can sometimes get very complex or data heavy. It could be time consuming and it needs political buy-in. Also, one question is, do we have, and this question was kind of asked before, do we have too many tools? Are these tools compatible? Are these tools upgradable? Are they able to meet new developments? Are they able to integrate new technologies? So those are just some of the questions I wanted to put out there myself as well. So thank you very much, and I look forward to continuing this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frugine. Not only to frame very precisely the question at hand, but also to share your experience, your personally and one of your colleagues and your Habitat itself, in working so hard and so well in the past 10 years developing CityRap. That's really an exceptional program for the matter at hand for the discussion today. Before getting back to you, I would like to ask our audience here on site and online to help us to answer this question: how urban resilience practice can help urban climate action planning. And Frugine, you have been anticipating most of my questions to you, but still I think I have one more that will be important that I would like to ask you to discuss. You've been mentioning the importance of having integrated approach, also having an integrated approach regarding adaptation mitigation. Same time, you've been speaking that your starting point is the local community. So my request to you is if you can elaborate a little bit more on this divide, the local community from one side, and from the other side, agenda that are coming from bilateral, multilateral institution asking, no, we won't just work on climate adaptation, no, it shall be only on sustainable development, on energy, and how do you bridge this divide in practice in your cities?
Thanks, Nicola. I wish I could offer a clear answer to that last part of your question. I don't think we're there yet. I think I very much agree with you that there is this division and this friction, and what we need to do is to continue to find ways to bring those different communities and those different priorities from different angles of the issue better together. And the only way we can do that is through dialogue. The only way we can do that is by the vertical top to bottom, and also bottom to top discussions, dialogues, listening to each other, learning from each other, listening to what is working on the ground, what is working in the communities. How could we look at both existing adaptation measures, existing adaptation options, new ideas that are coming from the communities, and also looking at how we can gain a common understanding of how we can focus on development in a way that also ensures mitigation goals. So I think that there's a lot more dialogue, discussion, and awareness raising, as well as exchange of knowledge and experience needed to actually be able to get to that point. So this is a joint goal that I think we're all working towards, but we're not quite there yet. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Frugine. And we have our result of the Mentimeter here, and eventually we can see from the lack of answers or the votes regarding helping departments to get together and integrate voices for communities. Actually, we know where to start from to rethink our urban resilience practice. Now I would like to introduce our next speaker that will be joining online, Rene, Peder, Hormann, that's the head of global programs at City Alliance. Rene, and now we are hoping to see you on screen and hear your voice soon.
Thank you very much, Nicola, for that kind introduction.
Here you are. Thank you very much, Rene, for joining us, and welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I think my intervention will be quite short because I was already very impressed by the presentations, and it feeds very well into Heike's and I think Fashina's focus. So first of all, thank you very much for that opportunity. Also for Arup and all the conveners to jointly reinforce the need for improved urban resilience, and my focus especially in rapidly urbanizing contexts such as in sub-Saharan Africa. In these very few minutes that are allocated to me, I wanted to just share a few thoughts and also perhaps make complementary remarks on what has been already shared as reflections from mainstreaming urban resilience practices. And my reflection is centered around the very fact that the negative effects of climate change are already exposing, but will more so expose inequalities in our cities like never before. I think especially in those cities in which local planning and financing capacities are not aligned to their annual urban growth rate, hence the focus on sub-Saharan Africa, and especially those cities, that small and medium-sized cities, because in our view, being resilient, living in these cities has become pretty much a livelihood strategy for those that work and live in informality. And that's the majority of the citizens. It's not the minority. We are talking here about around 1 billion people that are living in informal settlements. And if we think about the informal sector, up to 80% of the workforce in developing countries, their women are especially and disproportionately represented in both the informal economy with lower incomes and greater insecurity, and in informal settlements with limited access to basic services, and by definition are therefore more negatively affected by individual systems or ecological shocks. And this inequality is likely to increase, as we've heard, I think yesterday. As with climate change, it is expected that, for example, the economies of the 8 most affected countries in Africa will suffer a GDP collapse of up to 70% until the end of the century. So our point of departure is quite dire. And by this end of this very year, the pandemic alone has pushed an additional 100 million people worldwide into extreme poverty. Already among the most vulnerable, the total number of women and girls living in extreme poverty is around 430 million, with projections showing that this number will not revert to pre-pandemic levels until 2030. Why I'm pounding so much on this? I think addressing urban inequality and informality in the socioeconomic fabric cannot be separated from its resilience and the national and local policies that should reinforce it. And here I would like to share 2 observations or reflections for myself, one at the national level and one at the concrete service level in cities. Firstly, there is a need for an adequate national enabling environment for resilient cities, and I don't actually make it very short because we've heard that already through various lenses. I mean, the study that you referred to, Nicola, you by yourself, has already showing us that there are NDCs that show strong, the majority of NDCs, to be precise, show strong and moderate urban content. A month or 2 months ago, we've launched with UN Habitat, the OECD, a report on the state of national urban policies, and that showed that the majority of them have already climate resilience and low carbon transition goals included in the urban policies, right? And they are both, I think, dealing with mitigation and adaptation measures. So this underscores the growing recognition that applying an urban lens to climate change is not only important, but also, I think, recognized by many national governments. In addition, if we focus more on the national urban policy side, we found that the majority of them also have the resilience of vulnerable populations in the focus. I mean, it was around 67% to be very precise. So there is a space to include not only resilience, but also inequality in, and then I do apologize, in sectorial lenses such as we call urban. And I think we may come back to that discussion because that's potentially the biggest elephant in the room. And I think helpful to avoid discussions on sectors and how to, and I phrase here again, I think Heike said an integrated approach, and Pascale, we need to break silos, is really to overcome it is by looking at examples. And I think 2 countries that I would like to highlight here is Rwanda. I think they have shown that the national urban policy seeks to enhance the access to services and infrastructure for people living in informal settlements, upgrade their houses and services where possible, and facilitate the relocation from hazardous locations. Chile's national urban policy is also a very good example to think if you pursue an urban policy, how to look at natural hazards in different localities. So this is one on the national level. Now, my preferred, I think, focus is, of course, at the cities level. Secondly, climate finance and investments may not stop in the capital city, nor at the high street of secondary cities. And I think then we're coming back, as Lauren said, to the financing. In our view, leaving no one behind in resilient cities means to create affordable public services and accessible housing in the last mile of cities. And these are in the informal settlements and in the informal economies. We hear many times that 75% of the urban infrastructure is yet to be built by up to 2050, and that we need around $3.5 trillion to make that transition possible. Alarming, tempting, overwhelming, these are some of the reactions that we see from local governments in our partner cities to such figures, as the capital investment projects budgets are far from sufficient to even cope with that challenge. Two areas of infrastructure and services in the informal sector that could benefit from a greater attention, and that I would like to mention here, is one is construction material for incremental housing and the role of waste pickers in a circular economy, both situated in the last mile of cities in our view. Very quickly, first the housing. We know that we need to build up until 2030, and it's not too far away. Additional 2 billion people need, shelter. We know that many countries have the housing policies in place, but we know for a fact that the most effective builders of shelters in the world are private, the urban poor by themselves, outperforming formal private and public programs. So incremental housing accounts up to 70% of the global housing stock. But incremental self-built housing is becoming increasingly difficult due to the high costs of building material and, of course, lack of land, putting increasing strain on already vulnerable groups. So here lies, I think, a very innovative policy field for us to explore further, the new sustainable construction and building material that encourage a construction that is affordable, rapid to assemble, and made from sustainable, locally produced building components that homeowners and urban dwellers can apply by themselves according to their own needs. Nicola, last one, the waste management, which is also very close because sometimes we overlook it, is another area which we need a changing mindset in the contribution of recycling and informal practices of waste management, because this is still disregarded as being part and parcel of the solution. I think the informal recycling sector is an integral part of the circular economy in African cities, and we can watch this every day, but they are excluded from public procurement process. They're excluded to being actually a private, not a private, but an entity that provides services to citizens every day. But I think, and India has shown it, they can become our city champions in the circular economy, and this can be seen in many examples. Pune in India, I think, has won a fight and has also, shown national recognition what waste pickers can do, informal waste pickers. We see also other examples in other regions, such as in Belo Horizonte in Brazil or in Nakuru, Kenya. So colleagues, in a nutshell, the national environment for investing into resilient last mile service delivery in cities is currently insufficient, but it remains so if the contributions of the informal economy and people living in informal settlements are not valued and seen as part and parcel of the new development paradigm. Build on, and then there are floating concepts around regenerative principles for waste streams and build environment and the tools that we have. The donut model that I would like to promote here a little bit, and my city, Brussels, has signed up to Amsterdam as well. There are many ones, but I think the clear idea is, and the clear, I think our commitment should be that together, and this is, I would like to reiterate our general invitation to join the Citizen Alliance Partnership to explore such practices in more detail and put them into practice in our partner cities and countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rene. Now, again, I ask our audience to connect to the Mentimeter for our next question. Next slide, please. What are the most important capacities that we need, if you like to rank these 5? Rene, a very difficult answer and with a very quick question for you. Thank you very much, first of all, for your presentation, and thank you for sharing with us also your flagship report. That was a magnificent effort you've been realizing lately. I will ask you a quick answer. If the urban resilience framework and approach, it's actually, in your experience, helpful to reconcile the development agenda that you really put at the center of your work, speaking, for example, about informalities, and the climate change one.
And the question is whether we do this or how we do this.
No, if you think that urban resilience as a framework, it's fit for reconciling the two agendas together.
Definitely. In Liberia, for example, in a post-conflict country where we work directly through communities of federalized, groups of Slum Dwellers International on identifying risk hotspots, identifying service needs in the informal settlements directly at the coastline in a post-conflict country which was hit by pandemics in the past. And I have to say, according to the Liberians, I think the current pandemic, it was not the worst one. How to be prepared against stress factors, political, ecological, and social, and also that health crisis, brings you back to service delivery at the local level, and there where it counts the most, and the capacities of local authorities to provide them. And if they don't have them, who else can provide them? And this is really, I think, the heart of the resilience lands to me.
Thank you very much, Rene. And here we have our result. So first we need to start apparently with following the money and with the finance, governance, technical capacity, but all this, as we've been discussing so far, needs to work together. Now, last but not least, I would like to invite here our next panelist, that's Claudia Muzio, Minister for Public Space and Urban Hygiene at the City of Buenos Aires. Clara, if you'd like to join us here, and the floor is yours.
Okay. Good morning. It's a pleasure for me to be here today. I'm going to say yes to use the table. Yesterday we were discussing about the speech, and I decided to change all my speech, so I'm going to read, and of course to be more accurate in English, because my English is not really good, so I hope, whoops, it's work. Well, I don't know if you have the presentation. Okay. In 2018, the City of Buenos Aires presented a strategy we have been working on for a year. It was called Resilient Buenos Aires, and it was based on 5 areas: diversity, gender and coexistence, innovation, talent and opportunities, environmental and sustainability, social and urban integration, and security and risk management. Different projects which are included in the strategy: mobility, security, walkability, with gender perspective, education, data, recycling. But in 2020, this plan became part of an even more ambitious initiative. With the support of C40, we designed our climate action plan. You can explore in our platform, and then I think I have some pen drives to share with you if you want. We joined them together because the link between resilience and tackling climate change is obvious. Resilience is the roadmap that every city needs in order to achieve its climate change goals. And the same year, in 2020, Argentina presented an NDC with a federal approach that commits subnational governments to work together and towards sustainable urban and territorial development. One of the aims is to develop compact and biodiverse cities. The City Climate Action Plan is in line with Argentina NDC and has very ambitious goals. We aim to reduce 53% of our emissions by 2030 and 84% by 2050. And to meet our climate goals, we included many of the projects that we have in the resilience strategy. And I think that resilience has been a key issue throughout 2020. I'm sure that we will remember as intense and challenging a true test of the resilience of our cities, but our personal resilience also. The pandemic forced us to attend to urgent challenges in record time, and at the same time, it was a way of propelling us toward the future, triggering processes that we all probably expected would unfold more progressively. continue the presentation because I don't know where. Okay, perfect. And I want here to talk about the resilience of our public space. As COVID started, we have to deliver quickly intervention in public space. First of all, we did emergency fever units near the hospitals, occupying streets, sidewalks, parks. And as COVID began to slow down, we developed a strategy for returning to public space that was based on walkability. We have been working on decentralization, the city, for many years, fostering each neighborhood's dynamic and cultural identity, progressing towards the 15-minute city model. We were able, during the pandemic, to adapt more than 400,000 square meters for pedestrians, pedestrian areas, spaces for kids, for gastronomic sector, for new areas, for fairs. So the goal was to encourage local trade and sustainable mobility and to optimize public space in order to guarantee social distancing and protection measures. But looking towards the futures, it's very clear we need to continue to develop our city's resilience. One of our priorities is green urban infrastructure. This is why, as part of our plan, we aim to continue to grow our forest by 20%, and now we also are creating green streets, replacing tarmac with grass, and new areas and new biological reserves. Because urban nature has a profound transforming power, and it's one of the ways Buenos Aires is improving its citizens' lives, striving to turn public space into a true urban landscape. But resilience, I think that I'm going to speak quickly, but resilience doesn't depend exclusively on governments, on projects. Without informed and responsible citizens that want to make a difference and play their role in the transformation of our planet needs, all these initiatives are pointless. We want a greener cities with informed and committed citizens who take up the responsibility of incorporating better and more sustainable habits. This year, for example, we launched BA Recycles, a plan that aims for a cultural change. Our goal is that by 2023, every household in the city separates its recyclables so that they are collected by an urban recuperator, processed and reinserted in the industry. All this is a social, and this is a social inclusion plan. I don't know if I have there, but with more than 6,000 people working daily. Of course, we also improve the system and the disposal and the treatment. And as part of this plan, BA Recycles, we launched our Circular Economy Network. And I think this is a really important network because it involves all key actors in the productive chain to promote sustainable consumption, recycling, and the reutilization of resources in the industry. Throughout the year, 200 organizations join us. I have this pin. It's a flag of my country. This is made by the women, by the community of women with plastic bottoms. So this is one of the organizations that join us in the Circular Economy Network. We are developing a human-scale city specifically designed for the people who live in it, a city that prioritizes pedestrian, please continue, mobility and cycling, and that it is sustainable and accessible. Inclusion is, of course, one of the key issues of the resilience of our cities, and we prioritize actions that improve conditions for our most climate change vulnerable populations, looking for a fair and a balanced progress for all without exceptions. We want a city that is more safe and enjoyable for all citizens, citizen seniors, people with reduced mobility, children, so that anyone who lives or visits Buenos Aires feels at home included. We want to continue to advance towards gender equality and strengthen diversity. You know, more than 60% of the people who use public space and transport and public transport are women. And 100% of women have suffered street harassment at least once in their lifetime. So we have to continue to work on that too. Well, this transformation and a paramount in a city that wants to be a region leader in sustainability and that took of the challenge of becoming carbon neutral, resilient, and inclusive for 2050. The fact that our mayor is Horacio Rodríguez Larreta, is the regional vice president of C40, and that the next year Buenos Aires will host the C40 Mayor Summit, is a clear example of the extent of our commitment. So thank you very much. We need to stand all together and move forward.
Thank you very much, Minister. And thank you for showing up what it really means to use this resilience and approach and integrating agendas in real life on the ground. Very quick question for you, and I appreciate also a quick answer because unfortunately we're running out of time. And in Spanish I will help you translate. And the question is, where have you started to put together all the constellation of support from different stakeholders, from the national level to the different departments in your cities and the local communities?
I agree with Lauren, with Lauren said. I don't know if I can answer in Spanish and you translate. Bueno, muy de acuerdo con lo que dijo Lauren. Yo creo que todos los gobiernos, tanto nacionales como locales, tienen que trabajar juntos. No importa el partido político que representen, en temas de acción climática, en temas de resiliencia de las ciudades, tenemos que estar todos juntos en eso y también hacia adentro de los gobiernos locales, ¿no? Entre las áreas, entre los distintos ministerios, entre las distintas secretarías. Creo que eso es lo más importante porque en esto tenemos que tirar todos para el mismo lado.
So the minister was highlighting that in between national and local and subnational governments, the starting point is to forget about any difference in politics, but to harmonize efforts to integrated policies and a long-term vision. And the same differences, more local level, technical level, shall be also crossed over in the relation between different departments. Thank you very much for that. Now we have this last Mentimeter. That what change do we need to in order to improve urban resilience practice? And this is our very last question. Where do we start? And now I'm making it even more challenging because I would like to have a round table in just a couple of minutes total, unfortunately, as we are out of time, to ask you where do we start? And Lauren, unfortunately, the first round is yours.
That's okay, Nicola. I think I'm going to take issue with the question because I don't think we're starting. So I would say there are three things, right? We have a lot of capacity and common language. So we need to acknowledge that the language that we're using, nationally determined contributions, is a really important framework. That's why it's such a hot topic for discussion, right? Because you come in and you agree to the same set of metrics and different contributions to them, right? So we have the common language, and urban resilience also has a common language. You saw different applications, but we're all using urban resilience as a way to get to the social, the equity, the cultural, right? The inclusivity and the economic opportunity with climate, right? So that's what we have to do, is keep that common language together and keep, not start, but keep our language tight and keep working together on that. I think keep uniting our tools and approaches. And then finally, the single most important thing is that we use that consistent language of climate, equity, economic opportunity, so urban resilience being an umbrella for delivering net zero to mobilize the finance to deliver multiple benefits. Those are the things that we need to do. We need to keep doing them. We need to do them faster.
Thank you very much, Lauren, and that's brilliantly said. And I would like to ask Eike if you like to make.
Nicola, thank you very much.
Yes.
I think I can make it very brief because I would really like to just subscribe what Laura said. I think we are not at the starting point, but we have to continue and strengthen the approaches we have chosen and today discussed so far to be faster than we've been before and to be even more effective than we've been before, to really make cities resilient and adapt them to climate change and support them in mitigate the effects of urban living. in the field of climate change. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Heike. Now I would like to ask Frugina if she would like to make some remarks.
Thank you, Nicola. I also...
Yes, please, Frugina.
Yes, let me also just add my voice of agreement to Lauren and Heike. I think we need to coordinate better amongst ourselves and amongst our tools. I'd like to thank Rene for focusing on inequality and informality. Our weakest areas are the reflection of our overall strength. So we really need to continue to maintain our focus and to integrate these voices into planning, to leverage their knowledge and ideas. I also wanted to add, Pascal had talked a lot about data, and I also agree with him that we do have data, but what we are lacking is better knowledge management, and also to see how we could use the data that we're generating for different purposes. For this, we need partnerships. For example, with academia, our partnership with STU is a perfect example of that, but we need more of these partnerships, and we need to encourage them. And then finally, I think everybody has, of course, brought up the financing issue. If we're able to produce inclusive, integrated, multi-purpose resilience plans that are coming automatically with community buy-in, these are attractive to donors and investors, and the resilience practice can help us achieve this. So we definitely need to focus on the financing and find creative solutions for scaling up our capacity on financing as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frugina. And now I would like to ask Rene if he would like to make his final remark on this.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I guess also three things that I could change or could be improved is the mixing the use of global data collection with local enumerations, or a mix between local and global data collection. Secondly, I think we need to find new champions, especially in the informal sector in cities. And thirdly, I think that was already mentioned, we need to open up the climate financing for infrastructure in the last mile of cities. That would be my personal, and I think also the Citizen Alliance plea.
Thank you very much, Rene. I would like, I don't know if the minister would like to, Clara, if you like to add something.
I agree with all of them. I think that data, it's really important to get the base, then to have like a plan, an horizon, no? We, with other 9 cities of Latin America with a climate action plan, so I think data is so important to continue in that way.
Thank you very much, Clara. And now I will leave the floor to Pasquale for some final remark and some closure.
Well, thank you, Nicole. I'm not sure I had the time or the capacities to summarize any of it, but I think I'd like to close by sharing the fact that, having been involved for the last 20 years in this type of work and several COP, I feel an energy today that I haven't felt for a long time in this type of practice. I mean, look at us. You have a national government represented here, you have private sector I represent, you have a city, of course, you have international organizations. I think the opportunity is really ours to lose in the next cycle of the 5 years. And if we don't manage to, to leverage what we know about urban resilience and to really unlock the urban potential in the NDC, it's really an opportunity for us to lose. So I'd just like to thank this stellar panel, really, for being here today, and you for your expert facilitation. And I think we need to give the floor back to our next colleagues. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much. I would like just to ask the courtesy to take a virtual and physical family picture, if it's possible, to arrange the screen. And I also would like to take the opportunity to call here Larissa, that has been fundamental in arranging all this, and also Maria, that has been supporting the entire process.